Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and we are still working on our introduction to nHair, and this is part 4. So we just finished with the how we can manipulate the clumps and kind of get them looking the way we want them to look. Now, obviously, mine doesn't look the way it should because I got the display quality way down low. So I can simulate. So if I click on simulate, it'll simulate a lot faster. It's still really slow. So I kind of want to look at that. So we've gone through a lot of attributes and trying to get this to look good, and there's a couple things we have left. Okay. Dynamics is one. How you want it to look, shadow, shade, how to change the color. And then we need to look at the nucleus. Now we're going to look at the nucleus next because that's what's causing it to run so slow. So let's go back, and it has to do with our scale. All right, and so we got to keep that in mind. And this is the same thing as the scale we have in any end dynamics. If it's end cloth or end particles, we have to keep that in mind. So let's go ahead and go to the nucleus, and we're in hair system. Okay, make sure your outliner's open, and you click on hair system, and we can go in here, and you can see that the air density, you probably want to turn that up if you want the wind to actually affect the hair. So the air density is how thick the air is, so we can turn that up to 2 or 3. And turn the wind speed up higher than anything than 0. And then the wind direction and wind noise kind of gives you we worked with this with the flag, so you know how all those are set up. But what we haven't really messed with is down a little bit lower under scale attributes. Now I think I've touched on this once or twice, but the space scale has a lot to do with how fast this will actually simulate. So we're going to turn this down to something like 0.2. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and simulate the animation. You can see that's much faster. The simulation is much faster. Now it does change the way it looks. Okay, so just keep that in mind, that if you're not getting the results you really want, then you may want to go back to where it was. So just kind of play around with the scale. I wouldn't go much lower than 0.2. Okay, let's look at that compared to what we had. Let's do something like 0.6, and let's go ahead and play that and see how that looks. Now if you see it hasn't changed the way it looks, then feel free to go down to 0.2, and that will make your simulations run a lot faster. So it's really up to you how you want to do this. For this instance, I'm going to keep it down pretty low just so I can get through this pretty quickly. Okay, so that's under nucleus, and you got to make sure you have hair system 1 is selected. Okay, let's go back. Alright, so if you find that that's a problem, you can always bring it back to 1 again. Alright, so let's go back to hair system shape. That's where we started. Now again, when we have full display quality, we're actually seeing the hair effects. Okay, the curves are still driving the hair. The gravity's pulling the curves down. So anything that you have as far as gravity goes, that's under the nucleus. Anything you want, anything in the hair shape system is what it looks like, and the dynamics of the hair. Alright, so I already went through clump shape. Let's go ahead and go down to collisions now. Collisions is its own animal, its own beast. So the thing is, right now it is colliding with the ball, or it would collide with anything that has a passive rigid body. So let's say if I put a ground plane in here, or another ball, let's say, make that a little bit bigger, and I want to brush that ball against it. Let's say we animate it to go through this hair. Now it has to have a collider on it. Well, the collider is quite simply the end cloth collider that we used for the end cloth. So you can click on the object and go to end cloth and click on passive collider. So if you wanted to, you could go ahead and animate that to go through the hair. Okay, and it would actually, and you can test that theory if you want to. Right now we're running out of time, so I need to make sure, but that's how you interact. They will interact with each other. So keep that in mind. So anything that you want the hair to interact with would be a passive collider. Let's say you forget to have the hair collide with the object that it's on, and you want to add a collision later. All you have to do is select that object and go to end cloth and make it passive collider. So that's all you have to do. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and go into the hair system, and we're going to do self collide. So what that means is that the hair follicles now, the curves will interact with each other, and they'll see each other, but we have to give them a thickness. Okay, so that means the clumps. So let's take a look at what we have. So to collide, what does that look like? Well, let's go ahead and go to Solver Display. Now we've done this with the end cloth, so this looks familiar, I'm sure. Let's click on collision thickness. Alright, so that's what the collision thickness looks like with all the hairs, which is kind of wild looking. And then when I go to self collide, okay, you can see that the self collide is different. We don't want it to be the same size. Okay, so the self collide, let's bring that down a little bit. Let's see if we can get that to reevaluate. Oh, I need to go to self collision. There we go. Self collision. Okay, this is what we had before. So self collision, we want it to be a lot smaller, a lot thinner. Okay, all right, so that way, now if you find that they're not colliding with each other, you might want to make the thickness a little bit higher. But as long as they're smaller, or smaller than the collision thickness, you're good to go. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a simulation and see what that all looks like. There you go. And see, now they should be colliding with each other, which is going to give you a nicer volume with your hair. Okay, that's going to look a lot nicer. It's going to look a lot more natural looking. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the simulation. I'm going to turn that off. There we go. So now you can see that even with my display is at 100, it's still going pretty fast for me. That's because I changed my nucleus, so it's helped the simulation. But let's bring that down again so we can get it to run really fast, so we don't have any other issues there. There we go. So you don't have to wait very long, especially when I'm doing the videos and stuff. It's kind of a pain. There we go. So you can see how it's reacting now. So now we've got self collision on. That's really important. Alright, so self collision. Alright, so I've got mine set at 0.3. Everything's gonna be different. Bounciness, you don't really want you don't want much more bounciness than it has. Friction, again, be careful. I mean, it seems to be working really well. If you go too high, because I've got self collide, could cause a real problem. Stickiness, got to be very careful. Static clean, how it clings to other objects, just kind of like if your hair sticks to an object. It's got static electricity in it. You can kind of mess with that if you want to, but I'm just going to keep this at its default. Dynamic properties, well, excuse me. The start frame and end frame, okay, where you want the simulation to start. It's really up to you. We're gonna do ours at 1. Stretch resistance. Okay, so this one's kind of funny. If you have 0 on both of those, it just kind of hangs down forever and ever. So let's take a look at what that looks like. And there she goes. and she'll just go and go and go and go and go and go and go. You didn't need me to say that. So you got to have some kind of stretch resistance and compression resistance for it to even work. And normal hair is around 10 and 10. Now, let's say, because when you guys go on your own, you're going to create your own hairstyle. Let's say that you want a mohawk. And you know how mohawks are. The only way for a mohawk to look good, unless it's short, it's a long mohawk back in the punk days, 1970s, 80s. Hope I'm getting those years right. I should know, I was there. 1978, 79, 80 maybe. The punk era had the hair standing straight up, purple, red, green, whatever color you could imagine, but it stood up. So what happens, how do we get that to look like that? So what I would suggest is that we turn the resistance, the stretch resistance, up to 20, okay, and we turn the compression resistance up to 20, and then the bend resistance up to something like, we'll start with 3, okay. Now this is it's gonna resist when it's falling down now. So let's take a look. Okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and add a lot more to it then, I guess. Let's go to 10. Now this the ratio, now it's starting to hold on to it, but I think what's happening with this now is that my nucleus is causing some issues, my space. Okay, let's take a look at what that looks like now. It's still pulling down, but it's not, you can see that it's not going down. So the space scale is causing that to look differently. Okay, that means I'm going to have to pull with this set the way it was. You can see that this looks like more like a beard, like a long beard, right? So stubble, you know, it depends on the hair texture and the thickness and how short it is. So stubble will not bend like you saw before. Okay, so if I did a 0.2, you can see that it bends quite a bit. That would be like soft hair, long soft hair, right? Okay. Now beards are different. They're a little stiffer. The hair is a little thicker. So you get a bend, but it's not like hair, right? So this is about as far as it's going to go, and then it kind of springs back up again. Okay. So we could, if this was down to 0.2, we could go back in here to hair shape and turn these things way up to something like 60, and resistance here at 60, and turn this to something like 20. Then we might see that it will try to resist that, but it's still, because of the space thing, it's really, you're gonna have to crank that way up to get it to do what you want it to do. And notice that it's doing some crazy stuff here, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of trying to find its resting area for the hair. But you can get some interesting things happening. Okay, so it's kind of trying to see the bend resistance and the stretch and compression resistance. Okay, so I want you to be aware of those and how the nucleus can make a huge difference, because you can see it's bent over, but it is showing that the bend resistance there. Look at that. So it's there, and you can see it's resisting it. But because I've got this set so low on the space scale in the nucleus, it's not even seeing it now. If I go in here and turn that back to 1, you can see that it probably won't do anything. It's gonna bend a little bit, but it's not gonna bend much. Okay, so that's what you would do for your hair shape system if you want to create stiff hair. Okay, hair that's standing straight up. Now this doesn't work for all the hairstyles. In fact, if you give me something with the hair sticking straight out and you don't do anything to it, you probably won't get much of a grade with that. You need to have some kind of a hairstyle that makes sense, and you've got to have a I also need to have a reference. So when you get into the human mannequin head that you're going to be using next in creating your own hairstyle, you're going to need a reference. Now again, keep your hairstyles very simple. Okay, let's go back to this. That'll be in the next video when we get into that. Alright, so we've got the hair shape, we've got all this other stuff we got done, the dynamic properties, we figured that out. So I'm going to bring this deck back down to where we had it. I think it was 10 and 1, I think. Let's take a look. And that looks about right, because it's all going to fall down eventually. It just takes a lot of time. Okay, we just finished with dynamic properties. And if there's something here that you guys want to really get into and understand a little bit better and go on your own, then please, under the Module 12, lessons and lectures under Module 12, to check out the hair system shape attributes, and that covers the entire shape attributes that are available to you guys. So you guys, it's well documented, so please check it out. Right now we're not gonna mess with forces. I'm very happy with what we have. Again, you guys can look and mess with that. Also turbulence and caching. I'm more interested in the shading part of it and getting hair color going on. And Arnold will render hair, and it actually has a very powerful Arnold hair shader that you can apply, and I'll show you how to do that. But to get the full benefit of that, you'll have to have a really nice lighting setup, and you'll have to have an HDR image on the Arnold Sky Dome. So I'm not going to really mess with that because I think the software renderer will work just fine for this. If we wanted photorealistic hair, then we could use the Arnold shader system. And if you want to look more into that, feel free, and you may go ahead and render your hair that way, and I am perfectly fine with you doing that. So if you don't want to use the software renderer, you want to have something a little more robust, that is great. Do some research, go on your own, and but I do want you to do the hair in Maya. It needs to be nHair. Okay. Alright, so with that said, let's go ahead and start with the shading of the hair. So for this reason, I'm going to go to the top again really quick and just bring this up a little bit more so we can see more of the hair. There we go. I don't need a whole lot more, just a little bit more. And so the hair color, the best way to describe it is this is the entire hair color. Okay, so you can go ahead here and start with what you would like to see for the tips of the hair. That's what I usually tell students. So if you want to go with a lighter color, fantastic. Let's go with a lighter color, blonder color maybe, at the very tips. And then down here we're going to have a color that is going to be a little bit darker. Okay, so I can go in here and move this down and add a little shade of a darker color of a hair, and that will make it look a little more realistic. In fact, it will make it a lot more realistic. If you look at your roots, they're usually a little bit darker than the tips of your hair. So, and of course you guys can change the color of this anytime by clicking on these little round dots up here, okay, on your ramp. So I'm going to click on that, and let's just make it really drastic. Okay, so I'm going to go with a brown color, and as you can see, I can go pretty low, and it's really important that you kind of have this working beneficial to you, so we can go a little bit higher, maybe a little bit brighter with that to get a really nice color change between all three of those colors. Okay, and you can kind of mess around with that, and that's very powerful. And you can go as wild as you want. Let's say at the very tips, let's say you had colored your hair and the very tips are a different color. Let's say green or purple, or excuse me, pink. And then we can get into maybe a dark purple or something like that. It's really entirely up to you how you want your final hair color to look like. Okay? Alright, so there's a lot of variation you guys can come up with. So let's go ahead and just bring that back up to a light color. Instead of being just a plain color, now you've got something that looks a lot nicer. Okay, now let's look at how we render this. Again, you can use our Arnold Renderer, but that's a little more involved because you have to have a nice lighting system, HDR image, Skydome. Some of you guys don't have time for that, and some of you that do, feel free to go and do more research on it. I'll get you started, and then from there you guys can go on your own and do your own thing. As long as I get a render of it in the rest position. What does the rest position mean whenever I say that? It's when it's simulated. Now it's going to simulate super slow because I have this turned up too high. Okay. So I'm going to pause this while I... Okay, if you haven't noticed, I've changed the color of my ball. I don't know if you noticed that or not, but you can right click over and add a Lambert material, and you want to get it kind of close to the color. Now when I render this, I want to make sure that I don't have a background that is black. Okay, especially if you have black hair or really dark hair, that's really hard to see. There's not enough contrast between the background and the foreground. So let's go in here and start the rendering. Again, you can render in Arnold. I'm not saying you can't. Arnold will render. It'll render this right now. It just needs a light, like a dome, sky dome light. But we're going to go to Maya software, and this is going to be good enough for what we're trying to do today in the classroom. So we're going to set this up to production quality, highest quality, and then filter type to Gaussian. And then the only thing we need to change here is ray tracing. Make sure that's on. And then under Commons tab, there's nothing else to do here except for turn off enable default light. And so when I do that, though, I need to create my own light, and I'm going to create a directional light. Our scene is pretty large, so I'm going to go ahead and pull that out. It's hard to see it. And I'm just going to scale that up. And you can probably see that it's just pointing the wrong direction. So let's go ahead and add that and point it in the right direction. There we go. Okay, kind of opposite of the direction we're looking, so we can see some shadows. Now you're not going to see much shadow here because of the hair follicles are so small and thin. But let's go ahead and go back into the hair system here. And let's go back down. You can see that we've got our color now, and I've got the surface to be kind of close to the color, so we're not going to have any issues there. So let's go ahead and render out a scene and see what it looks like. There it is. Now because it's paint effects, you saw that, oh, it's not rendering, it showed the ball, but at the very end it will render. And you can see we got some really nice looking hair. Okay? Because the ball is a darker color, it looks really, really good. So I'm pretty happy with the results here. This is kind of like blonde hair that needs to have the roots done. So basically that is it. That's how you color your hair, and that's how you render. Again, when I rendered it was black, right? So I'm going to go ahead and turn that. I'm going to put that in, and you can see what it looks like if it's a little bit a different color. So how do I do that? How do I turn the background to be a different color? Let me get rid of this. I don't need that. So go to camera attribute editor, and in here you have to go to environment, and then in here you can go whatever color you want. So let's say if I don't want black, as got I have blonde hair, so that works out great. Black is a contrast. But let's say you have a really dark purple or dark red or really, really dark hair. You're going to want to go with a lighter color background. So this is how you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and render that. You can see what it looks like. You can see that now that I've got a different background. Now because my hair is more blonde, okay, I want the background to be dark. If you have dark hair, you want the background to be lighter. And I don't want white, right? White is just so difficult to look at. So when I render that out, it's just too harsh, and it's burning my eyes. It's just so harsh. So I'm going to go in here and just bring it down. Even a off gray, just just a little bit darker than the white is so much better than just white. And as you can see, but for me, a lighter color hair is best if it is black. That way it really is a contrasty color. There we go. There you go. Okay. So you're going to turn that in. Of course, I want that to be thin. Let's go ahead and turn on, find out where there you go. Get that centered and give me a render. Right, so I want it to be HD 1080, and it shouldn't take long, especially with Maya software, because it is super fast. Alright, so that looks good. Go ahead and do a render. And it shouldn't take too long. Okay, cool. Alright, so 1:1. Okay, that looks good. So you're going to turn that in. Again, the dark ball really helps hide all that hair that you didn't, you weren't able to fill it in. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Pretty cool. Make sure you save your scene. That's really important. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have you do a Playblast of an animation. So we're going to animate this, and you're going to give me a Playblast animation of that. A Playblast, not a rendering, a full render, just a Playblast. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm not worried about this anymore, so I'm going to just turn that off. Here we go. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the ball. Okay, I'm going to bring that to the very beginning. And I'm just going to move that ball back and forth. So I'm going to hit the S key for that. Go to, let's say, frame 60. I probably should move it over, just kind of rotate it like that. It won't matter, it's a round shape. And then move it over to the side. Now the hair is not moving with it, that's okay. Set a key, go to 120. Set a key like that. Let's get this centered a little bit more. There we go. And then we'll go back into the center. I'm going to go Control A to see where we're at here. Let's go to 0 with that and set a key. And then I'm going to go to frame, let's see, go to frame 240 and move it up. Set a key, and frame 300, move it down. Okay, and then we'll bring it back up again on frame 340. So something just simple like that, and that'll be our test. Okay, so let's take a look at the hair system, and I want to show you where you should be with this. I don't want to make this too difficult for you. So hair shape, clump, let's go back up to the top. Right now our display quality is 1.010. I could have you do that, okay? I don't know where you're at. I will take, something that's got a little bit of beef to it, maybe 50. if you can do, and you might have to wait it out, something like that, I'd be happy with that. So 50. But I don't want anything really flimsy. Now, if you got a system that just absolutely cannot handle that, feel free to go lower. It'll still show me that you did your assignment. Go as high as you can. Okay, and then do your then find out where your end is, and go right. Let's just say 400. So I'm going to type in 400. That will be our final frame. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and do the Playblast Animation. I'll show you how to get it all set up. So I'm going to click off of here. Make sure you're centered. Move out just a little bit, maybe more, like that. And we're going to go to Playblast. Okay. Let's go ahead and reset settings. Okay. Don't show ornaments. Just turn that off. AVI, yes. Encoding is Xvid. If you don't have that, make sure you download it, and then you have to restart Maya, restart your computer. Quality is 100, of course. Display from window, scale to be 1, frame padding 4. Save the file, and then go ahead and browse where you want this to go. You probably want to put your name on here, and let's do module 12, and we'll do ball, right? Because we have 2 Playblasts we got to do. I'm going to highlight that and copy that. Control C, and then hit browse. Go to my desktop and just do Control V, and that'll place it on there. And then I just Playblast. This might take a while, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the pause button on this. Okay, we're back, and I got it simulated. Let's take a look at it. It's always really cool to see the hair simulation with animation. Very, very, very cool. So that's what you're going to be turning in. Awesome. Okay, great. Okay, so that is it. So again, I hope you had fun with the ball and learned a lot about how to get everything set up. And again, the next video is I'm gonna help you get set up with the human mannequin head, and you're gonna have to take it from there. That means if you have to rewatch these videos to get it right, then you will rewatch these videos, and you're gonna be doing exactly the same thing. I want a render of the hair, a render of it. You can either use Arnold, or you can use what I've got here, which is just the Maya software. Again, I went through the whole entire process: how to paint, how to trim, how to extend hair. So if you blew through everything to get to the next one, you're gonna have to watch all the videos again. Plus, I'm grading you on this. I know this is only 10 points, but the big one is worth 30. So anyway, you got the gist of everything. Have fun, enjoy, experiment. Make sure you guys find a hairstyle. Again, if you are hoping to comb the hair and part the hair and all that stuff, that is going to be something that you would use XGen, because you can actually comb and groom the curves. So with this, we're just doing nHair, just plain old quick nHair, just to get you started. You can still come up with straight hair, hair with bangs, that kind of thing. Just have fun with it, and it's going to be fun to see what you guys come up with. Again, feel free to use the Arnold Renderer if you want to do that. It's pretty simple. You have to go into the hair shape, and you have to go down to Arnold, and you have to go in here and override hair, and then you'll have to go in here and add the shader. So again, it's not that hard. You just got to find Arnold shader, and then go into where you at here. They always change it. There it is, AI standard surface hair. Okay, and then go for it, and then make sure you have with Arnold, you have to have the right light system. A lot of students don't realize that, because if you want realistic looking objects, realistic looking hair, or anything else realistic skin, you have to have an HDRI image, and it has to be on the sky dome, and you have to know how to tweak all that stuff out and do all the lighting. So again, do your research. If you're going to use Arnold, make sure you do your research, and it is a lot of fun, but it takes a long time to get it to look right. Even though the hair shader is just absolutely phenomenal in Arnold, it is really good. Alright, so I'll see you guys in the next video. That's going to be our main assignment. That's going to be worth 30 points, where you're going to actually create your own hairstyle and place it on this character. Okay? Alright, have fun. I'll see you in the next video.